Closed captioning of this program is made possible by the Fireman's Fund Foundation.
This week, a new $50 million partnership between Toyota and electric car maker Tesla will bring new life to the shuttered NUMMI plant in Fremont. Legislative Democrats challenge the governor's plan to slash programs that benefit the poor. Also, a conversation with the Environmental Protection Agency's Jared Blumenfeld, and a look into the world of Pulitzer Prize-winning political cartoonist Mark Fiore.
Now is not the time for party crashers.
Coming up next. Hello, I'm Belva Davis, and welcome to This Week in Northern California. Joining me on our news panel tonight, Marisa Lagos, Sacramento reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle, on lawmakers' response to the governor's budget proposals, and Tom Vakar, consumer editor with KTVU, on the announced deal between Toyota and Tesla. Tom Vakar, there's still a lot developing on this story, but it broke yesterday. We know that there's a new partnership and that the NUMMI plant might reopen. What else do we know?
Well, what we know is that this happened very, very quickly, almost too quickly. This plant has only been closed for 7 weeks, and suddenly Toyota and Tesla have some sort of a deal in the work. Toyota's going to invest $50 million. Tesla already has $465 million loan from the federal government to get this thing going. Yesterday, Daimler bought a $50 million share, 10% interest in Tesla. A lot of people don't know that. Tesla says it's going to invest $200 million, which is a very small amount of money in retooling this plant. Now, they're going to use a very small corner of this plant because they're only going to make 20,000 cars a year. To give you a sense of what that is, 65 cars a day. That is a pittance compared to a regular car factory. But sitting there, all ready to go, is this other very large factory. Now, what's in it for Toyota? Toyota makes all kinds of cars at all different sizes, but they're all gasoline, and they do have the hybrid, the Prius, and a couple of others like that. But the reality is they're way behind in the electric car business. Tesla has a revolutionary drive system which really can give these cars like this $50,000 sedan they're going to manufacture there. They say it has a range of 300 miles. That's way better than just about any other electric car out there. So if Toyota can license that technology the same way it licenses hybrid technology to other manufacturers, now suddenly it's the biggest player in the electric car business. And let's face it, Nissan is coming out with the Leaf next year, an all-electric car. Chevy is coming out with the Volt, which is kind of a hybrid but more of an electric car than it is a gasoline car. These are real players in the game, and Toyota was way behind. So I have a feeling that these conversations have been taking place for a long, long time, but they wanted to make sure that they didn't do anything until they were sure the NUMMI thing was put to bed.
And who again was the surprise investor? You said we hadn't heard much about that.
Daimler, Mercedes, the people that do that. Now you think about that, makes sense, because now you have a U.S. base, but you have a Japanese, an Asian automaker, and you have a European automaker, and all these technologies can be cross-licensed, and because this is such a revolutionary product, it makes very good sense for them to do that. Plus, it's going to give them a worldwide reach very, very quickly.
Isn't there another angle here for Toyota? I mean, does this help burnish their image after all of the troubles of the past year or so?
There is no question that Toyota's image, especially in California, its single largest market outside of Japan, has been badly hurt, not only by the problems that they've had with the recalls and all that stuff, but they closed the last car plant west of Texas. So there was a lot of bad feelings about this. Suddenly, 7 weeks later, they come back knocking on the door saying, we're ready to do business again. The real potential of this plant is not just 1,000 people that Tesla will hire when they start building these cars in 2012. Remember, we're only talking, a year and a half to 2 years down the road where cars are going to be coming out of there. But you have this big plant. if they can start putting Corollas or Camrys or any of these other vehicles with this drive system in there, now you're talking about many thousands of people working in that plant, not to mention the many, many suppliers, some of which are on life support, some of which have just closed down temporarily hoping to get new business, some of which are gone. But there are many, many suppliers, many talented people, plus the original NUMMI workers that can really put together cars. And the one thing that Tesla doesn't know how to do, which Toyota knows, prodigiously, is building mass quantities of cars. Tesla knows how to do technology. Toyota knows how to build cars.
What about the NUMMI workers, the auto workers that were there before?
Well, they really have no stake in this other than the fact that Elon Musk, the CEO, says that they're very interested in hiring NUMMI workers, and they've actually started hiring a few to get the plant, ready and all of that stuff. But what is even more interesting than that is that these workers are some of the best car builders in the world. They know the Japanese construction system. You can apply it to Teslas as well as you can to Toyotas. So there's a ready workforce here, which is why Downey, which until yesterday thought that it was going to get this plant in an old NASA facility, they were turned down, and this was...
What do you think the chances are for the union being part of all of this?
Well, Elon Musk, the CEO, has said that he is neutral about that. I think that is going to be up to the workers. The question is, are the workers going to want to have a union there? My guess is that, if you want to get the best workers that know how to build cars, you're going to have to contend with that issue. On the other hand, this is a brave new world. There's no guarantees that electric cars are going to catch on as quickly as they need to. So it's a little bit of a crapshoot here, but there's a lot of money being put on the line, and usually when you put that kind of money on the line, you're not betting on losing.
Well, Tom, it's good to have you on to talk about some good news.
Yeah, for once.
Marisa Lagos, this week the Democrats had their chance to talk back to the governor about the proposals that he's made in terms of hitting programs that benefit the poor quite heavily. Also, the Democrats are saying they will no longer negotiate a budget deal the way they used to, that they want to change the way that this business is done. Can they do either of those things?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it's clear at this point that a lot of the proposals the governor put out here, eliminating welfare to work, we'd be the only state without a program like that. I think that was the beginning of a long, hot summer of negotiations. Now, you mentioned the idea of kind of taking this out of the Big Five, doing this more open. The new Assembly Speaker, John Perez, has said that from the beginning. Whether or not he can do that is really going to be up to other people besides just him. I mean, the Senate Pro Tem, Darrell Steinberg's been there for a couple of years. Unions are already hitting him. The CTA put up billboards this week saying, Mr. Steinberg, we need your help. We can't cut more teachers. So he's one player. But I think a lot of this really goes back to Governor Schwarzenegger. He likes those Big Five negotiations. His chief of staff, Susan Kennedy, tends to like them. And whether or not they can really do this in the open sort of budget process, I'm not sure.
Quickly, what is the Big Five?
I'm sorry. The Big Five would be the four Democratic and Republican leaders in both houses and the governor. And what's happened since Governor Schwarzenegger's taken office is that you tend to see a lot of the sort of really big picture stuff happening behind closed doors. It used to be that they only went and sat down at that table when they were trying to hammer out the really sort of end details of this budget. But yeah, I mean, this week the Assembly, a committee already rejected his proposal to cut this welfare program. That's 1.4 million Californians affected, 80% of them kids. We're talking about $1.2 billion there. The other thing the Democrats just out of hand have said no way to cuts to the in-home support services, which provides at-home care for elderly people. And one of the things with all these issues that you're going to hear a lot from Democrats is that it's not just the, $12 billion or so in cuts that you're making. You're also going to lose federal funds. You're going to lose tax dollars. So there's a lot at work.
Schwarzenegger is weak because he's had a very bad run, meaning, the state's in a terrible financial shape. He's also a lame duck. I mean, is he really a player in this? I mean, he's going to certainly go through the budget, but is he really a player, or is he kind of a weak player now?
I think he's going to do as much as he can to keep himself relevant, and given the sort of size of this budget and this budget deficit rather, and the fact that Republicans have always managed, as much as they don't like him, I think they dislike him more than Democrats, they usually close ranks, and the Democrats still fight amongst themselves. If that happens again this summer, I think you'll see that he is as relevant as he's been in years past.
You mentioned Senator Steinberg, and then you have John Perez, who's new to the legislature,
right.
new as the Speaker. What's the relationship between those two Democrats?
You know, I think that remains to be seen. We haven't seen any public clashes. Wouldn't consider them particularly close per se. You know, John Perez came from a union negotiating background, and so you know, I think there's a lot of things from that he can take to this that could be positive. But we're talking about a very different situation when you're negotiating an $85 billion budget compared to, you know, a union contract for private companies. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think definitely Perez and Schwarzenegger have not started off on a good foot. We saw last week the Speaker was at Pebble Beach at a fundraiser while the budget was rolled out. He came out this week and, as one columnist put it, kind of stuck his foot in his mouth when he basically said, well, the governor did this because, because I was there on this day. Well, the Constitution says when he has to put out this budget.
Well, I guess if you can take a silver lining from this is that you think that the governor really didn't mean it when he said he wanted to get rid of all of the welfare programs for the state. Well, we hope not. Anyway.
We'll see.
Okay. Well, my thanks to both of you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Baba.
Now some other stories from the news this week. A historic lawsuit filed by 9 California school districts charged the state with failing its constitutional obligation to support education. It could change the way schools are funded and force the state to fund programs that are required by law. Republican gubernatorial candidate Meg Whitman and Steve Poizner are locked in what now appears to be a tight race in the June 8th primary. Democrat Jerry Brown is running unopposed.
Oil companies and environmental.
To access all of KQED's election coverage, visit kqed.org/thisweek, where you'll find discussions from This Week in Northern California, candidate interviews and debates on ballot initiatives from Forum, in-depth stories from the California Report, and valuable online resources for voters. Well, joining me now is the man who's President Obama's recently appointed to the regional administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency, Jared Blumenfeld. Welcome, first of all. Let me start by saying you're in a new job. You've worked in San Francisco. You've been with Park and Rec. You've done some environmental work here. But what's at the top of your list now that you're the EPA guy?
So, Belva, first of all, thank you for having me tonight. This region is fairly large. It goes all the way from Guam, Hawaii, Arizona, Nevada, California. And what you really realize is that there's been an 8-year drought. In terms of the environment, many of the programs from the federal level have gone very little distance over that 8-year period. So communities from LA to San Diego to Phoenix to Las Vegas to the Bay Area are really thirsty for environmental programs and leadership, and that's what President Obama has been doing.
We talk about the environment, we talk a lot about greenhouse gas emissions. Most of us don't quite understand what it is we're talking about, except that it's supposed to be a very good thing if we do something about it. Why don't you tell us what are greenhouse gas emissions and why and how do we handle this problem?
Belva, I think most people, I'd agree, are mystified. Is it some new thing? Is it a global issue? Really, greenhouse gas emissions come from 3 main areas. Transportation, us driving, trucks, cars, buses, everything. That's about 50%. Then building energy, so every time you switch on the light or have the refrigerator or your dishwasher, all those things take energy. And that energy can either come from clean sources like renewable energy and solar, or dirty sources like coal and non-renewable energy. And then the last element is the stuff we throw away and forget to recycle that ends up in landfill. All those things produce what are called greenhouse gases.
So when we talk about the Tesla deal with Toyota, we're talking about an effort to do something about these emissions from autos and trucks.
Yeah, as you heard, there's now kind of a feverish race to get the new technology, and I think that's really what sets California aside from the rest of the nation is this innovation, this desire to be on the cutting edge, and the whole trend to get cleaner vehicles started in California and now has moved to the rest of the nation. Tesla is desperately in a race to get the best battery technology, and if what we just heard, if you have a 300-mile range, that will really revolutionize the way that we think about vehicles.
Well, EPA issued just a little while ago some standards on emissions, but today President Obama said that he wanted more. He wanted tougher standards. Can you tell us about what the president's talking about and why maybe he was dissatisfied with where things are now?
Well, you may remember in the Bush administration there was a Supreme Court decision that said, EPA, you need to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Nothing happened. Then Obama comes into office and says, you know what, we're going to take this seriously. We're going to actually regulate greenhouse gas emissions. So you heard at the beginning of the administration that we're going to do light-duty vehicles, normal cars and pickup trucks. Yesterday and today's announcement was about big trucks and medium-sized trucks, which represent about 4% of all vehicles, but about 20% of all the emissions. And when you think about vehicle emissions, it's not just greenhouse gas emissions. It's all the tiny particulate matter that causes kids and elderly to get asthma, that can cause cancer. So many of the things that are wrapped up in greenhouse gas emissions are also things that cause human health problems at the local level.
Mm-hmm. President Obama is going to be in the Bay Area just next week. I think next Wednesday he's going to go down and look at a place where they're making solar panels. Why is this important? Why is the president going to take time out and go visit a manufacturing company here?
So I think the president and our administrator at EPA, Lisa Jackson, have really said, you know, the economy is not at odds with the environment. The economy will only grow if we do things to clean up our environment. And so solar power is a growing industry. There are rebates in cities across the nation that are now adopting and realizing that you can save money and help the environment by putting solar panels on your roof. The people at that facility have jobs, and it's actually the fastest growing sector in California at the moment is the clean tech sector. There are about 12,000 companies in California promoting clean tech, and about 500,000 people today working for new solutions for tomorrow.
Well, Solyndra, the company in Fremont also, is getting a pretty big loan guarantee from the federal government, and I guess that's causing other investors to be interested in them. But what are they doing that's different, and how do they get so far out in front that they get a loan guarantee of that size and they get a presidential visit?
So, Belvo, a lot of people wondered, where did all these billions of dollars for the Reinvestment Act, the stimulus package, go? And a lot of it went to the Department of Energy and EPA to promote clean technologies and bring people back to work. And the Department of Energy did competitive bids. Both, we were just talking about the batteries for Tesla. There were U.S. companies that won that bid in Massachusetts. Here in California, there's new technologies that do a number of things. They make solar panels more efficient, so they get the process of converting sunlight into electricity better. And the second thing they do is make it less expensive. And so those are the two main things that are being looked at. And the third is a really important one, which is hiring local people and bringing people that currently don't have jobs back into the economy through clean energy.
You had an interest, and very quickly at the end, in doing something to help people in low-income neighborhoods. Is there still a room with all these big issues before you to work on that?
To me, that's the most important issue. Those who can afford it least shouldn't be paying the highest electricity bills. Our public housing leaks energy. There's no water efficiency, so poor people end up paying the most for the services that the rest of us can afford, energy efficiency and renewable energy. And so I think we really need to make sure that we serve the people that need our help the most first.
Well, 4 months on the job, and I can see your hands are full. We thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Belva.
Okay. Well, this year's Pulitzer Prize will be handed out on Monday at Columbia University. San Francisco's Mark Fiore, a political cartoonist who creates online animations, has been awarded the Pulitzer for editorial cartooning. Spencer Michaels looks at Fiore's use of biting satire in this profile, co-produced by KQED Spark and PBS NewsHour.
From New York to San Francisco comes word across the wires of a Pulitzer on the mark? What's the story, ink-stained Fiore?
The story is that 40-year-old Mark Fiore is the first internet animator to win a Pulitzer Prize for political cartooning. His work appears only online, on his own website, plus that of the San Francisco Chronicle, National Public Radio, and other outlets.
We have... now is not the time for party crashers.
Fiore's range is broad, his perspective left of center.
We tackle war, warming, healthcare, torture, spying, and the impact of the great economic implosion.
His cartoons were among the first to go online, but today there's a growing body of animated internet satire with their roots in print.
I like to think that I won not because it's new and different and uses the media in a different way, but I think I won because it has a message and it says something, and it really packs a punch.
Fiore diligently reads and watches the news for something that gets him angry.
It starts by getting worked up about an issue and then researching it more, drilling down, and then trying to simplify that into a message.
At first, Fiore says that anger really showed in his cartoons.
There was a lot of, ham-fisted, heavy-handed cartooning. And after a while, it gets really old and boring. I still get angry, but that's internally. And the cartoons may get that anger out much more through humor and through a little more of a finessing. You open a place in people's mind when you start the little humor engine going, and you can get in there with a little more opinion and a little more pointed satire if it's funny.
You socialist organ harvesters pushed through the health care bill.
Oh, Mr. Dan, that's wonderful. 32 million uninsured people will now have health coverage. What did you say about organ harvesting?
Your Obamacare tyranny has begun. I'm talking about freedom-killing, death panel-loving totalitarianism.
You mean the part of the bill that makes it so you can't cancel someone's insurance if they get sick?
No, dog.
Healthcare reform was kind of a boring cartoon topic. Because really, when you think of healthcare reform, it only got exciting because of all the battling and the fighting and the Tea Party and and the back and forth between the conservatives and the liberals.
Fiore makes no bones about being liberal.
I've really gone pretty heavy after the Tea Party crew, mainly because there's a lot of people that are in the Tea Party movement that are just saying insanely extreme things that aren't true.
You can be fluent in conversational teabag in just a few short minutes. Use teabag's stronger, more descriptive words.
Nazi, Nazi, Nazi.
Perfect.
I don't want Obamunist disembowelatrons to come between me and my doctor.
But he finds plenty to satirize in the Democratic White House.
I've criticized Obama for his stance on domestic spying and for continuing some of the same things the Bush administration has been doing.
I've decided to implement the least worst plan of terribleness. I had the difficult duty of ordering 30,000 additional young servicemen and women to war. We will de-escalate by escalating, exit by entering, and we'll make good with bad. America does not shrink in the face of President Karzai's brother. Please, do not sell drugs on stage.
Fiore grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, got a degree in political science from Colorado College, and then a job doing print cartoons at the San Jose Mercury News. 10 years ago, he began freelancing his animated political cartoons, which don't sit well with everyone. He gets plenty of criticism and puts a lot of it on his website.
Are we supposed to take you seriously, Mark Fiore?
I wanted to say to you, you're an idiot. You, sir, remind me of something one vomits up after they've had a bad meal.
There's a big push these days to represent both sides. And it's very hard for anybody in journalism to represent both sides when one side is not based in fact or reality. Let alone hard for a cartoonist to represent that. Because I don't think a political cartoonist particularly should always represent both sides.
Fiore wanted to put his cartoons into an application for the iPhone, but last December Apple turned him down, and he later read that the company doesn't allow ridicule of public figures.
And lo and behold, I win the Pulitzer, this article comes out, and that same day I get a call from Apple saying, hey, maybe you should resubmit that app. So I'm in the process of resubmitting, and I hope they basically just take that part out of the contract and realize that satire and political discourse is important and should be accepted.
This month, after he received his Pulitzer, Apple relented. Despite his prize, Fiore still has deadlines to meet. The target this time, Goldman Sachs, and the fund it allegedly set up to lose money.
But why fix what's broken when you can make it worse and profit handsomely?
Goldman Sachs has been, just an insane cartoonist dream over this last year. So, from God's work to the devil's work, you never know. So it's just perfect cartoon material.
The prestige that comes with the Pulitzer has not only boosted the number of hits Mark Fiore's work gets, but he's convinced it will encourage the entire field of internet political cartooning.
The exhibition Birth of Impressionism, Masterpieces from the Musée d'Orsay, opens this weekend at the De Young Museum in San Francisco. It features nearly 100 works by some of the world's most famous artists, including Monet and Renoir, and runs until September 6. Visit kqed.org/thisweek for a slideshow. We leave you now with some magnificent images from the exhibit. I'm Belva Davis. Good night.
Major funding for Spark on This Week in Northern California is provided by Diane B. Wilsey. Additional funding provided by the George Frederick Jewett Foundation, Helen Sarah Steyer, and Fred Levin and Nancy Livingston of the Shenson Fund.